Celtic harps, part 2. How many levers? So originally, when companies first introduced the lever harp, they all had levers. But then eventually people realized that you could offer a cheaper harp by not including the levers, because there's the cost not only of the lever itself, but also of installing it and making sure it's in the perfect position. So nowadays, you often get an option of, say, no levers, a certain number of levers, maybe all the C's and F's, or a full set of levers, one on each string. And what they do is they raise or lower the string by half a tone. So this is C natural, middle C. If I move the lever up, it goes to C sharp. And I'm sorry, I'm too far away from my camera to be able to zoom it in, but hopefully you can see, or maybe you can see some other videos showing that close-up action. And there are various different levers, types of levers. So that's what the levers do. Do you need levers? Well, there are two things that we use them for. One is to be able to play accidentals, and that's the name for when normally in the piece we're playing, say, a C natural, but it's maybe one time we need a C sharp. And if we have no levers, we can't do anything to change that C. We can't whip out our tuning key and change the tuning in the middle of the piece. So with the levers, we can play it and then change it and then change it back again when we need, back to the C natural. Now, that may or may not be a restriction, because I'm thinking, say, of the Betty Pray first harp book, which I like quite a bit. I use quite often. And it was written, I think, more with a pedal harp in mind, but there's maybe 3 or 4 pieces in it that require an accidental, a lever change. So not very many. You can play most of the pieces in there without changing any levers, without any accidentals. Folk music, like traditional music, Celtic music, generally doesn't have any accidentals. Obviously, stuff like jazz or classical music can tend to be quite chromatic and would need levers. So you can certainly find a lot of music that doesn't have any accidentals. Great. But then the other thing that levers do is they allow us to easily change the key. So in other words, right now we're in E flat. To get to C, we'd put these up. If we want to get in the key of G, we'd also put the F's up to sharp. So that's really easy between pieces to do that. We can do the same thing without any levers, but we have to retune each. So let's say we want to go from G back down to C. We'd have to retune all the F's back down to natural. Imagine I'm holding a little tuner, which is somewhere around here. So that gets old pretty fast. And what often ends up happening is we just look for music that's in the key that a harp is tuned in. We can transpose music, take music that, say, was written in G and move it to C. So in other words, instead of playing a G, every time that the G is written, we'll play a C instead. And with all the music notation software, that's certainly possible. Or if maybe you're a great musician from some other instrument and you can do that in your head already, more power to you. Awesome. Or maybe you're playing by ear and you can just pick it out in the appropriate key. But I think what you will find is that not having any levers is going to put some restrictions on you in terms of the repertoire that you can find. And it's also kind of annoying to always just be playing in one key. It's sometimes nice to have a slightly different sound of a different key. So, not too bad to begin with, but I think it will start to bother you. Now, there's a halfway option, as I say. Sometimes harps might have, say, an F lever, because often you might go from C to G. Well, it's better than nothing, right? Or maybe an F and a C, because traditional music often is in G and D, which 2 sharps is the key of D, as opposed to, say, F. I think it has to do with how a guitar, which chords are easier. So you won't as often have a B lever. So these options, they're better than nothing. But as I mentioned in my synopsis, my feeling would be that I wouldn't necessarily want to go halfway, right? I'd rather go with no levers, and again, for on a smaller harp, right? Try to get yourself sort of into the harp world with, say, a 26-string like harpsichord, for example, with no levers, that you know you're going to probably outgrow, but that is kind of the most inexpensive option. Or go ahead and get a full set of levers. So, yes, it's possible that if you're only playing, say, traditional music, you might find that, say, just an F and a C lever do you. That's fine. But it might be worth that extra money to get those extra levers on there. So anyway, that's what the levers do. My recommendation would be go to 0 levers or all levers. And especially as you start to get to, say, a bigger harp like the 34th string, I would definitely say get a full set of levers because, for example, if you ever want to sell it, it's a lot easier to sell a normal fully levered harp than a 34th string harp that doesn't have any levers.